My next guest was, there's no contest, I think, the most irreverent Governor-General New Zealand has ever had, and the most popular. She was also New Zealand's first female Governor-General. She was before that Mayor of Auckland, first female Mayor of Auckland, first female Mayor of a major city, actually, I think. And she has, as she records in her memoirs, been damed 4 times, a claim which enabled her to share a dirty double entendre with the Duke of Edinburgh, and not everybody can say that. She is, of course, Dame Cath Tizard. Her memoirs are entitled Cat Among the Pigeons, and she joins me now. Hello.
Good morning.
How are you?
Tony Blair's a hard act to follow, isn't he?
I'm sure you'll manage. What an interesting life you have had.
I have.
I did not know you were a zoologist.
Not a very good one, but yes, I taught zoology for just about 20 years. I ran the Stage 1 labs at Auckland University for Zoology 1.
Now, that came about when your then-husband, Bob Tizard, lost his seat in the 1960 election. That would have been Tamaki.
That's right.
You decided you needed qualifications.
Yes.
So, you were married at 20. You had 4 babies in 5 years.
Just under 6 years, don't exaggerate.
Whatever. And then you decided that you needed to do something with your life.
Well, I had half a degree and no training in anything whatsoever. And, excuse me, it wasn't exactly a Damascene experience, but I did realise that if anything happened to Bob, or if he walked out, which I didn't think he would, but I had no way of supporting those children except going and doing someone's housework. So I thought I'd better get cracking and get some qualifications.
Was that hard?
Yes, it was. It involved many years of very hard work. I had the 4 children at home. We had a boarder. Bob was away. He went back into politics fairly quickly, within 2 years, and studying, and then I started teaching after 2 years. Yes, it was hard work.
You were a student of Bob's.
Yes, that's true.
I can understand why you married him. He was so masterful. What was it he said to you when he took you to lunch?
When he took me home in the car for the first time and sitting in the dark outside where I was boarding in Auckland, he said, "Now, Catherine," he said, "I've got 2 things to tell you. I'm going into politics and I'm going to marry you." And I said, "What party?" And when he scornfully said, "Well, Labour, of course," I thought, oh, well, that's all right. I could take him home to meet my parents, and I didn't think about the other thing particularly.
You clearly had no objection to it.
Oh, no. I was very flattered. I was a second-year student. He was a junior lecturer. He was very handsome.
Sounds vaguely unethical.
Do you know, there didn't seem to be any sort of real prohibitions. There certainly were, if anything was surreptitious or sub rosa, or if it was a married man, but neither of us had any. We didn't hide anything, but I think I mentioned in the book at the end of that year he marked my papers, and then without telling Professor Airy what his marks were, he handed them over to Professor Airy to mark independently, and they came up with the same mark, plus or minus 1. So, he behaved very scrupulously in that way.
3 months after the wedding, he stood for politics, for the Labour Party, and that was
every
the way it
remorseless 3 years thereafter.
It was not easy, suffice it to say, being the wife of a politician, absentee spouse, absentee father. A lot of the time you felt like a solo mother.
I was a solo mother, in effect, and in addition to that, and I've thought of this rather bitterly when there's been so much hoo-ha about politicians' expenses and what they get. In those early days, there were no electorate officers. There was no electorate secretary. There were no taxi chits. There were no cars available. The politician's wife had to act as an unpaid electorate secretary. and I had to answer the phone. Sunday nights were awful. When he should have been spending time with the children, the phone would be going with people wanting advice or complaints or that sort of thing. And I used to take the phone off the hook sometimes just so he could spend some time with, over dinner with the kids. And our whole lives were orchestrated around getting Bob to the plane on Tuesday morning and going to pick him up on Friday night.
Difficult as it may have been, the marriage lasted for 32 years.
Oh, no. The marriage only lasted for 30.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yes. Yes.
Did it end the marriage finally, the whole politician thing?
No. It wasn't. We just grew apart and we were
easy
people.
to grow apart when
Yes.
one's interest is in Wellington and the other's interest is in Auckland.
That's right. And politicians, I came to the conclusion, had two separate lives. Their life in Wellington was all-absorbing and important. And I think for many of them, home life was a bit of an interruption.
It was Bob, actually, who suggested you stand for the Auckland City Council first in 1971.
He didn't suggest it, Kim. He put
signed you
my
up.
name on a ticket
Yes.
over my express refusal. I was very rude to him and hung up on him. And then I got the paper next morning, and our routine was that when I had to get the kids off to school, I'd take him his breakfast in bed in the morning and the paper. So I got up early, got the paper, read it, had my cup of coffee, and to my absolute horror, in the Morning Herald, I saw that I was on the Labour ticket for the Auckland City Council. He didn't get much friendly, loving, wifely comfort that day.
Were you seriously cross?
I was very cross. I had quite enough to do, thank you. And I thought, oh, well, I can take my name off the ticket. And then I thought, oh, that's not a very good look, is it? And then I thought, well, what does it really matter? Nobody standing on a Labour ticket ever gets onto the Auckland City Council. There was one person who claimed to be Labour there, and the rest of them were all citizens and ratepayers.
Claimed to be Labour?
I beg your pardon?
Claimed to be Labour.
The man?
Yes.
Oh, I suppose he was Labour, but I mean,
You're talking about Michael Bassett?
No. His name was Alec Drever.
Ah.
Michael Bassett and I were elected at that election.
Yeah.
And then there were 3 of us out of 21.
Ah. Yes.
Yeah.
That must have felt a bit onerous at times.
Well, you were realistic about it. You knew that you couldn't push anything through. You had one vote. But the CNR weren't entirely acting as one anyway. And one of the things I decided to do was just to behave ordinarily and get to know them and, try and get their confidence. One of the things I did the next term, Mike Bassett went into politics during that term, and the next time Jim Anderton was elected. And after the monthly big council meeting, we used to go into the council's room and have a drink. And so I'd go and have a drink with them. Jim would never come. He called me a traitor for drinking with the enemy. And I kept thinking, if you regard them as the enemy, you're never going to get any of your ideas through. So, why don't you treat them like human beings? And it actually did work, I think, in the end. But it was an interesting time, and you had to learn some skills of persuasion and some political skills, I suppose.
Still, I suppose you pick your enemies, as I said to Tony Blair. You loathed Muldoon. He was somebody I don't imagine you would have sat down and had a chat to too easily.
No. I actually cover that in the book I've just written, Kim.
I know, that's why I said it to you.
There's a photograph. Did you see the photograph of
Yes.
me with Mr. Muldoon smiling? And was I smiling?
You were smiling.
I had asked him to come to lunch at the City Council in order to establish good relations with the government, and so I had to be nice to him. But no, I did not admire Mr. Muldoon.
There are a few people that you won't forgive. Richard Prebble's another one. Actually, Richard Prebble was somebody who made you vote Green in one election. As Governor-General, didn't you have to deal in a gracious way with people you detested?
Yes.
And how did you get on?
Fine.
There's one, talking about pictures in the book, actually, there's a lovely photo of you and the Queen. And you're at Altair Square for a Pacific Island welcome. And the Queen has this huge grin on her face, such as I really have never seen. It's not that Queenie smile.
No.
She's having such a good time. Had
We
you
always
told her
got
a
on.
dirty joke or something?
No, I have no idea what we were talking about. No, the only near dirty joke I ever told the Queen, and it wasn't really, she asked me once when I was visiting her at Buckingham Palace, and we'd had our cup of tea in the afternoon. It was about 4 o'clock, and she said to me, "Would you like a gin before you go?" And I said, "Oh, that'd be very nice, Your Majesty." So we had a gin, and she said to me, "Now tell me, is it true that Mr. Muldoon has gone to the back benches?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And she said, "Isn't that a problem for the government? Is he being troublesome?" And I looked at her and thought for a moment, and I said, "If I weren't talking to a queen, I might tell you what he was reported as actually saying." And she raised her eyebrows at me, and I said, "Well, he was asked that question by the press. Was he going to be a thorn in the flesh of the government?" And he said, "No, I'm just going to be a little prick."
And thus it came
And
to
she
pass.
laughed.
Did she?
It went through my mind, goodness me, she's been married to a sailor. She must have heard, a couple of things like that before. But her private secretary who was there said to my private secretary, "Didn't know where to put my face."
Yeah, obviously her staff are a bit more po-faced than she is. Poor old
She can be
Queen.
quite good fun.
I bet.
Yes.
You obviously took to politics because in 1980 you stood for the Auckland mayoralty. You didn't win. And that was shortly after the end of the marriage. So I'm figuring that the end of the marriage and losing the mayoralty contest made things horrible for you.
I didn't expect to win the mayoralty.
So why did you enter it?
Because Dovemeyer Robinson had been there too long, and he was causing us, the council, some problems, and a lot of people thought it was time he moved on. And I was just getting an awful lot of pressure to stand from a lot of people, and I thought, oh, blow, all right, well, if it gives Robbie a bit of a shake-up, I'll stand. And I didn't really expect to win. I thought Robbie would win. And I don't think it was helped by the the Saturday evening paper having on its billboard, "Tizard marriage breakup." And I don't think that cost me the election, but it probably didn't help. But anyhow, that was all right. I didn't win that. And it was a bit after that Bob and I broke up. And yes, it was upsetting. I didn't know how I would support myself in my old age because I didn't have any superannuation of my own or anything like that. And, I was a bit nervous about things like that and had a very bad weekend. He went on the Friday night and I had a very bad weekend. And then on Wednesday, I was walking along the corridor of the zoo department and I was whistling. And I suddenly realised I felt as if a whole hod of bricks had come off my head. And from then on, things were fine. We worked it out.
Did you ever think of getting married again?
Nope.
That was too quick. Why?
Didn't want to. Didn't meet anyone I wanted to marry
All right, just
again.
Just checking, because you're such a gregarious person. I thought you would like it.
That's true. And I've got lots of men friends. I can always find a handbag what dances if I need one. And no, I never wanted to marry again.
When you became the Mayor of Auckland, the Altair Centre became a nightmare, really, of cost overruns and lawsuits and political battles, and you're bound, as you explain in your memoir, by a confidentiality settlement with Hawkins Construction, not to talk about the horror of it all, but it was a bad time, right? And the hardest decision was going with Fletcher's to finish Artea Centre. You felt very lonely when you had to make that decision.
Very lonely indeed, yes. It was... well, we had made the decision. The council had actually made the decision, but there was pressure on for me to call an emergency council meeting at which the constructors, the building firm, would present new proposals and we would settle it all. Now, we'd already signed the contract with Fletcher's, but I knew that a sufficient number of the councillors were very, very nervous because of the threats of legal action and things like that, that some of them might lose their nerve and give in. And I just thought the consequences would be disastrous. I mean, Fletcher's could have sued us then. But anyhow, I went through it and I decided not to. And once the decision was made, that was it. But the confidentiality agreements came over something that happened subsequently when I announced to the new council. People seem to have forgotten that we've already had an amalgamation in Auckland.
Yes, I was going to say, you're already super-ish.
We amalgamated 9 territorial local authorities into one. And at the first day of the new council, the director of works had said to me the night before, "Oh, by the way, you can announce that Artea's finished." And I said, "What do you mean finished?" "Everything except the inside." And he said to me very snootily, "When I say it's finished, it's finished. It'll be ready for the Commonwealth Games and all is well." So I announced this the next day and everyone just sat there, no response, and I thought they haven't taken this in. So I said again, and then I said that Fletcher's had worked a miracle and it justified our decision to change contractors. And that was regarded as a defamation worth $16.1 million.
Let's hope you haven't charged it all up again by reiteration.
Anyhow, that went on for a couple of years. No, it was all published. I'm allowed to say it because it was published. And anyhow, that went on for a few years and then it was all settled. But there was that, the part of the settlement was that there would be no defamatory things said by either party.
You didn't toy at any stage with standing as mayor of the super city this time around?
Oh,
did you?
I'm going to fall off the seat laughing.
No, did you really?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Well, in the first place, I'm nearly 80. In the second place, I am not a great admirer of the way this has been handled. I think the idea is right and it should have been done many, many years ago. But I would have liked to have seen it done more gradually, to have the infrastructure in place before the political side of things.
And without, I'd hazard a guess, the presence of Rodney Hyde.
Well, I don't know Rodney Hyde, but you mean the presence? I mean, he's not going to be on the council.
But the political influence behind the structure.
The way it was done, I think, was inept. And but we've got to go for it now. We'll try to make it work. No, I did not, but many, many people have said to me, "Why don't you stand?" And I think the answer has been there, done that.
When you became Governor-General, you were in the early stages of another term as Mayor of Auckland.
Mm.
Did you hesitate to say yes?
Oh, yes. I was devastated. I mean, this was just such a huge thing and came completely out of the blue as far as I was concerned.
Well, as far as most people are concerned, I suppose if they thought about it in retrospect, who'd have thought that a divorced atheist female would become Governor-General?
Right, and an outspoken one too. All of the above. Yes, my first thought was, oh, this is a marvellous opportunity. It would give me a pension through into my old age. It would be a great honour. It would be good fun. But how can I betray the people of Auckland who've just elected me for the third time with a greatly increased majority? I was elected the first time on 33 and a third percent or something like that. The next time was 66, and this time was 74%. And I thought, they've given me such a vote of confidence. It's betrayal. And, this went on and on until one of my daughters said to me, I finally told her, and she said, "Oh, for goodness sake, Mum." She said, "Go on like this." She said, "You'll have a heart attack and you'll die, and there'll have to be a by-election anyway." And I thought, oh, perhaps there's some point in that. Anyhow, I decided to accept with the proviso with Geoffrey Palmer, who was the Prime Minister, that I could go on acting as mayor until Aotearoa was opened, which was the end of September. And he agreed to that. And I called a press conference and said to them, "Look, I need you to give me a fair go, because if every time I open my mouth and say something, report it as Governor General Designate says instead of Mayor of Auckland," I said, "this will be impossible." And I've got to say, they did give me a fair go. I got very well treated from the press at that time, and I went on doing my job as Mayor of Auckland till Aotearoa was finished, and then I had my farewells. So I did 1 year of the 3-year term.
You've perfectly open at the time, of course, about being divorced, about being an atheist, even about being a woman. But there was a documentary in the lead up to your ascent to the Governor-Generalship in which the makers wanted to caption a picture of you in your wedding dress and the bride was pregnant. And you said no.
A number of people said no, but I joined them. I didn't think it was necessary. I thought it was just a bit of titillation that wasn't called for, and the makers of the documentary agreed.
If you hadn't been about to be Governor General, would you have said no?
Yes.
All right. I'm just checking whether the dignity of the office had changed your view of...
It reinforced it. I didn't think I needed to start off in the Governor-Generalship in that way, but it was hardly a secret.
Well, not anymore.
Well, anybody who could count knew.
Are you a Republican at all?
Not particularly.
Have you ever been a Republican at all?
No, I don't think so. I was brought up in my mother and my mother aunties used to give me books on the little princesses and things like that. I mean, with my brain, I've always thought the situation was rather ridiculous. But as I say to other people who can't understand, like, Japanese and Americans and almost everybody else who isn't in the Commonwealth, can't understand why the Queen who lives on the other side of the world can be Queen of New Zealand. And I've given up trying to explain, and I just say, look, it's a quaint, old-fashioned, traditional system which suits us very well. And it suits us perfectly all right.
Have you ever spoken to the Queen about the chances of us becoming a republic?
Oh, yes, we've had a number of discussions about it.
How does she feel?
She is perfectly sanguine about it, and her
She wouldn't take it personally.
She was a little bit worried at one stage that when Jim Bolger talked about it in the House, that this was something personal, and I had to explain to her that I didn't think it was not personal as regards her as a person. It might be personal regarding him as a person of Irish descent, but I had to explain that. But what she said to me was, well, in the end, it's New Zealand's decision, and if that was what New Zealand, of course we would go along with it.
So what's your prediction?
I would suspect that, given the impetus that seems to be around at the moment, that things will start to move to put arrangements in place that when the Queen is no longer with us, this may be the time to sever the links. But I would just hope it is done decently and in order, and without any any nastiness or savagery, and that we do it properly, and also that we think it through, because there are implications there if we no longer have a Governor-General, for example. Okay, the easy thing is, we'll just have a president. Well, look at the hash the Australians made of deciding that. If you're going to have a nominated president who hasn't got executive power, you've got to think about how that's done. Is it done, by the majority of Parliament or by the party in power? Those sorts of things. If it's going to be an elected president, which is what the Australian public said, we want to elect our president, then who's going to stand for election and put up all that money? I mean, it'd probably run into not just hundreds of thousands, but probably 1 million or so to
be a figurehead,
to be a figurehead, to have no executive power. And if that's so important to that person, do we want that person? So we've got to think these things through and work them out properly before the time comes.
It would seem a shame to become a republic at the end of the Queen's time, because poor Prince Charles has been hanging around for long enough. It seems a shame to reduce his dominion, don't you think?
Well, that's another consideration. I mean, he's a very decent man and a very nice man. I like Prince Charles a lot. But yes, it would be a real snub to him, wouldn't it? And that's why I think if we're going to do it, we start putting the mechanisms in place so that it's not thrust on him when his time comes to take the throne, that, blow you, Prince Charles, we don't want you. I would like to see it, as I say, done decently and in order.
What changes do you think you made long-term to the way a Governor-General operates?
I think I got some of the pomp and stuffiness out of Government House. Paul Rees, of course, before me, had opened it up in a much more welcoming way to Māori, and that was good. And I think I made women more comfortable at Government House. And I think I got some of the excess formality out of the household. There's one story I tell about discovering there was always a scuttle when I came downstairs in the morning. And the tradition had been that the housemaids doing the vacuuming or the cleaning had to disappear from sight while the Governor-General walked from the bottom of the stairs to his or her study. And I told the housekeeper that I thought that was ridiculous. I said, I'll tell you if I'm bringing visitors through, but I don't believe the house is cleaned by midnight pixies. The place has to be cleaned. Let them do their jobs. And, just in terms of getting people to relax when they came to Government House instead of being totally overawed, I think we all did something in that line.
There's a very funny story you tell about a dinner party at Windsor Castle where you sat between...
I know it.
Will you tell it?
Go on, you tell it.
Well, you're sitting between
two very tall
men, Duke of Edinburgh on one side and the chair of British Airways.
That's right.
Lord King on the other.
And I apologised to Lord King for fidgeting because I had a new rather beautiful crossover brocade top which wouldn't stay done up. And I kept trying to press the hook on it so it would latch properly. And I finally said, look, I'm sorry, I'm fidgeting, Lord King. I can't get my top to stay done up. And he was about 6'5", I think. He leaned over me and he looked down and said, no problem to me, madam. And at the same time, the Duke on the other side leaned over and said, no problem to me either.
That is a funny story, and you got a flight on Concorde out of it.
I did. Well, I don't know that it was looking down my cleavage that gave me the flight on Concorde, but Lord King did say, had I flown on Concorde, and I said no, and he said, oh, that's terrible. You must take Concorde on your way home. So I flew on the Concorde to New York and then picked up Air New Zealand in America.
Do you think that you succeeded in local body politics and as Governor-General because you were a woman, not despite being a woman because you were a woman?
No, I don't. I think
Because there are certain things that, certain charming events, certain flirtatious events, certain interactions with people that only happen because you are a woman. And that helped you get along with people. You being you.
Was it because I was a woman or because I had a sense of humour?
Well, I don't know. I
No.
mean, I don't think the Duke of Edinburgh and Lord King would have peered down Paul Reeves's cleavage. Do you know what I mean?
No, I certainly do know what you mean. I take your point, but there were still a lot of negatives about being a woman. The patronage, we don't have another lady for you to chat to sort of thing. And goodness me, she hasn't got a husband. What do we do about... there were a lot of negatives still there. I hope there were fewer for Sylvia Cartwright when she became governor. But I know she would agree with me that being a woman in a job like that. The other funny story, I think, was about watching the military parade in Aotea Square when one of the councillors, as Robbie got up with his Pirate King's hat on and the chain and the cloak to inspect the troops, and one of the councillors turned to the other and said, "There you are, can you imagine a woman doing a job like that?" And one of the other councillors' wives behind him leaned over and said in a very polite voice, "You're probably right, Mel, but don't you think someone ought to have told the Queen?" I thought that was delightful. I wasn't there that day, but I loved the story.
What are you occupying yourself with most now?
Well, it's been writing a book, and it's taken me 14 years.
Well, that's all over now.
That's
Moving
all
on.
over now. Moving on. Well, I need something to do, really. I've started tidying up papers and sorting out the filing cabinet.
That sounds like displacement activity to me.
No, it has to be done, but I don't enjoy it very much. I've had lots and lots of jobs since then that has given me an interest. I've chaired some ministerial advisory committees, and perhaps I'll ask Mr. Key if he's got a job for me.
For a zoologist, an unemployed zoologist.
Oh, no. I'm too far from zoology now. I think those days are over. I loved it at the time, and it gave me a whole new dimension on life. At the age of 30, I suddenly discovered that I did have a life other than being a wife and mother, and that was fantastic.
Well, all right, we'll put your name up on the sits vacant column.
Now, listen, you've asked for people to send messages in about people who shouldn't be on your show.
Oh, well, it was a joke.
I'm glad they didn't come in before you started interviewing me, because my name might have been on there.
Oh, I thought
list.
you were going to give me your own personal list.
No, my name might have been on that
Prebble,
list.
Rob Muldoon. It's very nice to talk to you.
You too, Kim.
Dame Cath Tizard, whose memoir is entitled Cat. Her initials are CAT, amongst the pigeons.